Welcome to the Right Fight Podcast, a discussion about how to live a loving life. I'm Reg Lloyd, and we're having a conversation with Kenny Vaughn. And Kenny, today we talk about the seventh and last thing that you say in the book is love, and that is that love perseveres. You talk about persevering being a journey, and that the chance that we have to persevere is when we find ourselves wanting to quit. So take off with this.
Yeah, so love doesn't just persevere, because persevering is something I've practiced a lot, but unfortunately a lot of times I've practiced in persevering in selfishness and stupid, So love isn't just perseverance, but love certainly perseveres. And for clarity, all this out 1 Corinthians 13, it tells us these 7 things that love is, these 8 things that love is not. And so this is God's words telling us love perseveres. But what does that mean, and what does that look like? And so, a lot of my life, I just thought it meant, winners never quit, quitters never win. And so my problem was I always ended up quitting somewhere along the way. So I just figured I'm not a winner, I'm a quitter, but I would usually try again. So the first thing I would like to just throw out there and clarify is that most people who ultimately win or achieve their dream or find their purpose, which is what really matters, they persevere, but they quit many times along the way. So I would just argue that people who persevere also quit sometimes, but that they always get back up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just as a quick example, my mom's in her 70s now. For 30 years, she tried to quit smoking, but she hadn't smoked in 20 years. So she persevered. But she quit She quit quitting. That's a bad one to use, right? Because she quit smoking, but then she gave up and went back. So she quit on the right decision many times. But so persevering is don't think that because you quit you can't persevere. That's all I'm trying to say. Just get up and go again, man. Just try again. Keep trying. And I get a lot of direct messages, and they're like, how do I overcome this? How do I break this bad habit? How do I get over this this hurt in my life? How do I get past all these roadblocks? And everybody's kind of looking for what's a few words that are just going to motivate me and I can go or whatever. And sometimes there's wisdom that can help us do that. Sometimes God speaks and frees us from that. But I would say love perseveres. So just keep getting back up and keep moving forward. Now if you persevere in staying stuck, if you're trying to get over a hurt and you persevere and playing it over and over and over and over and over and over again in your head, then you're not going to go anywhere, right? But if you keep getting back up and trying to move on, if you keep quitting, if it's something you need to quit, if you keep trying again, if it's something you need to try again, but if you persevere, so you fall, you quit, you fail, you lay down. My dad used to tell me, hey, it's okay to cry for a couple of days. You can quit today. You get up and you go again. So I would say it's about how many times can you get up after being knocked down. In many ways determines whether or not we persevere. And so, but I think it's important also to realize, how do you practice persevering? All right, and there's a lot of things like this, right? But because I think practice is critical and it's important. And one of the lessons I learned about this, I didn't learn about persevering, but I was able to take what I learned and apply it to persevering. Was from ski jumping, and no matter what sport you play or what you do, I don't care what you do. I don't know if it's theater, anything you do. It's like I was a ski jumper, so in my case, sometimes I would show up and it's my turn to go. And man, I'm just feeling jacked. I'm pumped. I feel like I can jump over the moon. I don't even know why. I'm ready to go. My legs are hopping. I'm like, man, give me my stuff. I'm ready. Let's go. But then sometimes I walk out there and it's like I'm dragging a 500-pound gorilla. I don't even know why my legs are so weak. I don't know why I feel so weak. And for a long time, I felt like when I felt right, I could perform right. And when I felt poor, I would perform poor. So my performance, my decisions that I make in life, all the things that mean so much in my life, the decisions I make and the choices that I make were basically dependent upon how I felt. In the case of skiing, If I felt weak, it's like I didn't have much hope. I mean, like, it wasn't there. And then one day I thought, Lord, I was just praying, Lord, how do I overcome this? And this is what I learned. The only time I could practice overcoming my legs feeling weak was when they felt weak. So I couldn't just make myself feel weak. I couldn't make myself feel like I wanted to give up. I couldn't create this environment that, I could train in to become better at it. And so I decided, I still remember the day and exactly where I was, and I was waiting my turn to ski, and it felt like, man, I don't even know if I can hang on, to get to the ramp, whether or not I can jump or not. I just felt like puny, and just thinking, you know what? This is the best chance I have to practice overcoming this. And then it occurred to me, do I really think my legs are weaker because they feel weaker? Or do I really think they're stronger because they feel stronger? And the truth is they're not. Like, my legs don't care how I feel. They're muscles I've created in training. They're going to do their job. I wasn't weaker because I felt weaker, and I wasn't stronger because I felt stronger. I was just obeying a feeling that I had. And so what I learned was, and this is the crazy part, as I practiced that, I started thinking, man, it's when I feel weak, but I persevere, that I perform the best. So I used to dread, I would get sick in my stomach if I felt weak walking out. Now I'm like, come on, man, I need to feel weak. You know what I mean? So that I can, because it's when I feel that and I push through it, it seems like I'm stronger. And so I don't know if any of that's true or not, but the whole dynamic changed. So then what I learned was, whenever in life and in perseverance, it's like the best chance I have to practice persevering is when I want to quit, or after I quit, or after. It's the only chance I have, right?
That is so good. You've just helped so many of us reframe those moments, that in those moments is really a great opportunity to.
Maybe the only one, I think. So then, instead of being so deflated and so down and so depressed and sad and everything else, whenever I would feel weak or whenever I want to quit and all that, I realized this is my opportunity to persevere. This is the best chance I have. The problem is I don't feel like I can. That's the problem, right? But that's the problem I need to overcome. And the only way I know to do that is to put my trust in God and to say, hey, I only got a little bit to give. All I can do is get up. Or if I can't get up, I can crawl, or whatever it is. I can do something, but because I trust you and I love you and I want to persevere, I'm going to do that. And then you do that in a little thing, whatever the little things, I say this all the time, the little things are actually the big things. And what I'm saying is, the big thing is not once you're up and running to run a little faster. The big thing is whenever you can't get up at all, but you start fighting to get up. You see somebody down, you think they're never going to get up, but then you see them start trying to get up, and you're like, uh-oh. Right? Stop trying, if you don't want them to get up, just don't move, and and everything's good. So you start fighting to get up. So that's the best opportunity we have to persevere. But I also want to share a story here, and this one, like, buckle up a little bit, because I know it's going to be hard for me to get through, because is when I was a kid. Of course, man, I know it's going to be this hard. Somebody slapped me around a little bit. But, I lost Dad not long ago, and this was Mom and Dad. We were kids. We had, I would say, like, the perfect family, just, it was nothing but joy and peace and happiness and everything. And I don't remember, I must have been like maybe 12, maybe 4, probably 14, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And I have no idea what happened. I still don't know. I'm glad I don't know, and I hope I never know. But my mom and dad went off, they started fighting like cats and dogs. Not fist fighting, right? But, I mean, it got ugly, and it went on for months. I remember, just being so happy. Every day I would come home from school, and I would, couldn't wait to get off the bus and just come running inside. Mom had music playing, dinner's cooking. You know, Dad's about to be home. I'm looking for Dad. And he's like, you know, can I go play outside? You know, it's just wonderful. It was like coming home to heaven every day until it got so bad, you know, that I would get home. I wouldn't want to get home. The school bus to last longer. The ride to last longer, you know. I get home. I don't want to go inside. Or I get to the door and I can already hear the yelling, you know. I can remember we had boom boxes, you know what I mean? So I go straight to my room, get my boom box turned up because I didn't want to hear the fussing and the fighting, you know. And I could see, you know, you know when your mom and dad are not happy and they're miserable and they're not liking each other, it's not hard to tell. Like I didn't even want to walk through the room because I could feel it. And then, you know, turn the boom box up too loud, they get sick and tired of that. They'd be hollering me. I remember getting some of I don't remember what it was back then. I'm like, I didn't even remember that they had earmuffs with music in them going way back then. I must have plugged it into the record player or something, or the cassette. But they had those, but I remember getting some of those, so I would just go in my room and put them on so I couldn't hear, okay? It was brutal for months. I remember my dad sending this vase of flowers to our house. There was 5 in our family. There were 4 roses in the vase. And I snuck and I read the note from Mom. And it said, if you want me to stay, add a rose. And if you don't, I'll know. And man, them roses died with 4 in the vase. And so many times I wanted to put a dang rose in that vase, but I knew my mom had to do it. But she didn't. I remember we loved, you know, if we went somewhere and we were around other people, they would pretend. That was like the best, you know. And I don't know what was going on, man, but I remember we were about to go somewhere, and we would get excited, you know, me, my brother, and my sister. But for some reason, when they both started getting ready, I don't know if because they got ready in the same bathroom together or what it was, man. But once they started getting ready, we started figuring out they probably wouldn't finish getting ready before things started, you know, screaming started, you know. And I remember so many times being so excited to go somewhere, thinking, please, can they just get ready? They wouldn't make it. I remember one time they finished getting ready, and we were walking to our neighbor's house for something. They were cooking or something. Couldn't wait to get there. Halfway through the walk, you know, they came undone. We had to come home. It was brutal, man. It really was. And I like to throw this in here. I'm 55 years old, I think. I may be 56. I can't remember. I still don't know what happened. My mom and dad protected us from whatever went on, you know, and they protected each other from what was going on. Like, even though they seemed to hate each other at that time, they protected us from what they had going on in there. And I'm so grateful that, like, I don't need to know. If somebody knows, please don't tell me. Like, I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to know. I don't need to know. I know my mom and my dad love me. But this is what happened. They persevered. They quit. I remember my dad leaving a couple times, but then coming back home, you know, and I was so glad he came back home. I remember one time Mom saying, we're all leaving. And I was too young to say I'm not, but I said, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to leave. And she didn't. But they persevered, man. And one day I was at school. They never picked me up from school. I usually rode the bus home. The rest of my life, I'll never forget. Dad's truck pulled up, and Mom was in there. And they were both smiling. and they both seemed happy. And they got better from there. And the last almost 2 years, Dad was slowly dying, you know. Mom didn't leave the house once. And I would tell her, Mom, why don't you come out of there, you know? Let's go do something. Get out of the house. She said, you don't understand, Kenny. I don't want to leave your dad. I want to be with your dad. I'm not going to leave your dad. And so they persevered, and they saved our family. Yeah. and it was brutal. And I don't know. I often wonder. There's so much I don't want to know. I don't usually ask much about it, but I think I remember this. I think what turned that tide. There's one thing I remember. I know Dad was wanting it to me because he did the roses, right? And Mom was like, she didn't add the rose, man. But if I knew why, I'd probably throw them all out. I don't know. You know what I mean? I have no idea. So, and I don't want to know. But what was my point?
They stayed together.
Yeah.
I mean, she wouldn't leave the house.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about also, which I think stood out to me in your chapter, love never fails. You said we can fail to love, but that love never fails.
That's right.
That when we love, it's not going to fail.
That's right. Love doesn't fail. We do fail to love. And when we fail to love, if we persevere, we get up and we love again. Right? And I think this is where I was trying to go a second ago, is that I hardly remember that. All I know, like I just told you pretty much everything I remember about that. But I've got 50 years of wonderful memories of a loving family and a mom and dad that illustrated for us and our children and their grandchildren how to keep on loving, And so I don't think they had any idea where to go. And this was the other thing I was going to say before I lost myself there, was like, what turned that tide where I was going, and I got distracted. But I think I remember that someone got my mom a book. And that, I don't even know what the book was called or what it was, but she read it. And she changed her mind. And she decided to fight for her family. And they persevered. And I would say in many ways, they not only did their love and their decision to persevere in that love change their lives forever. They're like, you never seen a couple more inseparable than they were. In 60 years of marriage or whatever it is, they had about a 2-year stretch that was, it might have been a year. I don't remember. I was so young. Hard to remember. It was brutal, okay? But they could have quit there. And I would say they did quit many times in that stretch. But then they persevered. In the end, they persevered. And they were inseparable for all the years after, even into my dad's death. And they modeled that for our whole family. And I can say I feel like I'm the most loved by my parents, and my brothers and sisters. And anyway, so I told you when I talked about Dad, he left his own full.
Yeah. Well, you just said that your mom chose to fight for her family. Yeah. And that goes along with the title of your book. It's The Right Fight. She chose the right fight. Yeah. And that is the fight to love. Yep. Well, this wraps up another podcast. Trust God's word no matter what.
Keep your eyes on the horizon.
Thanks for listening to the Right Fight podcast. Make sure to check out Kenny's book, The Right Fight, for more on how to live a loving life. It's available on their website, shieldsofstrength.com, Audible, and all digital platforms. If you have any questions for the podcast, you can email support@shieldsofstrength.com and put podcast as the subject. And make sure to follow Kenny on Instagram and TikTok @JohnKennedyVaughn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.